this quote from LeBron James in advance of the game against Miami, because the Miami LeBron stuff always weird, just always weird, and doesn't need to be weird, but it's always weird. And he was asked about his time in Miami, and LeBron said that he'd still be just as dominant if he never went to the Miami Heat. And then he doubled down on the tweets. You're damn right. I would still be. I'm chosen, in caps. Ain't nothing changing that. Maybe less rings, but dominant from start to finish. And it's like, why are you doing this? I don't. This is such a strange and unnecessary thing for him to say or do, because I think on one level he's right. He's so talented that in the end, we will still talk about him as being one of the greatest players of all time. But dog, people are cutting you slack on those 4 rings as it is. If you only had 3 or 2, there are discussions that you would not be present in, like just at the superficial level. But the other part, man, you tell me if I'm crazy here. I know you got all kinds of numbers you can look at later and some of the postseason performances like 2016, 2018, all this stuff. To me, there's been no better version of LeBron James than the version that was in Miami from 2011 through 2013. Those back-to-back MVP seasons. It ain't never, ever been like that. And that was not just about him. It's because in part, it was the first time that somebody else was in charge and they got the best out of that dude.
I would take it a step further. Short of Michael Jordan, right? I don't think there's a player in modern NBA history, or maybe even if you go further back, that's better with that stretch, with those 2 years, with maybe he should have been Defensive Player of the Year. But let's just say, okay, he wasn't Defensive Player of the Year. Doesn't mean anything. Small ball. He's defending everything. He's efficient as hell. He's shooting 40 from 3. And he's learning how to, I guess, approach his zen and be better in the clutch and all this other type of stuff and not lose his shit. Okay, cool. Here's the thing. LeBron was the second best player, if not the third best player in the 2011 finals. And he was the best player in the league. You can't say that failure didn't lead to the next 2 years. If he'd stayed in Cleveland, right? There's no Kyrie Irving. Maybe there's no Kevin Love because you don't have the assets. Cleveland would have been right up against where they were. Can you imagine, Bo, if the Cleveland Cavaliers of LeBron James lost to the Chicago Bulls of 6'2" Derrick Rose because they were a better put together team? The world would lose their effing minds. And for him to act as if Dwayne Wade didn't help, Eric Spoelstra didn't help, the structure of Pat Riley didn't help, the stuff that he carried from Miami back to Cleveland, which helped him win, that's not revisionist history. That's intellectually dishonest, man.
Yeah. Well, the thing to me is that, and this just seems to be just how he looks at stuff, right? LeBron doesn't think that the organization and the team and the coach or any of that stuff really matters. Like, he thinks it kind of matters, but he doesn't think those things really matter. Like, he thinks it's just all about the players. And I'm just inclined to disagree about that. I think that all those things around you and the support that you get, they matter. Like, he made Eric Spoelstra a better coach. Spo ain't never looked as good a coach as he did when he was advancing the whole pace and space thing, which you can't do without the talent of LeBron or Chris Bosh or the guys that you had around, right? Like, it absolutely does go back and forth. But the idea that the time in Miami meant nothing, that is, number one, it's the most significant period of time in your career by any objective measurement, right? The levels at which he grew up seem very clear from this distance and where we were, right? Like, this is the launching of him into the stratosphere, being the person that he is. The idea that, like, no, everything goes the same, it just seemed unnecessary. I just couldn't figure out why you wouldn't even just pay this measure of lip service to it, unless you need us to believe all of this at all times is about you. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. It don't have to do with Dwayne Wade holding your hand through every press conference. Because don't forget that happened for a year. And I'm not shading LeBron on that in the sense that I can't imagine what it would have been like otherwise. But that's Miami right there. But LeBron just doesn't think that culture matters. And you know this because he has twice voluntarily decided to entrust his career to organizations that I would not entrust my career to. The time he went back to the Cavs and when he went to the Lakers, he was going to the opposite of competence in both cases.
Well, the crazy thing for me is remember how tight LeBron was after 2011 when he gave this y'all broke speech, which is clearly
Love
one
it.
of the funniest
Love it.
things you've ever heard
Love
in
it.
your life. But
Love it.
imagine if he didn't have Dwayne Wade there. Like he was holding that in up until that very moment, right? Because in that press conference, Dwayne Wade was sitting next to him. And Dwayne Wade was sitting next to him, like you said, holding his hand this whole time. If he had to be there by himself, taking those slings and those arrows, do you know how quickly he would have snapped? Do you know how quickly he would have said, y'all brokies? And to which I have no problem with him
By the
saying,
way, he
mind you.
never called y'all broke. He just said he was going back to his life and you'd go to yours and y'all knew y'all was broke. He never said they was broke. And I will also note, and this gets lost, he did some press conferences the year before that were worse. Like when he was wetting the bed against the Celtics and came in and said, yeah, I just think that everybody's been spoiled by my play. Can you imagine if he had said that in the Miami era? Like if he had said that sitting up there in 2011, he didn't say that then. And that was what was most important. Like he didn't dodge the fact that he played like dog shit.
But here's the thing that gets me, and it dovetails to Kevin Durant a little bit. Because when KD was in Golden State, it was like, okay, here's this culture. We got all this talent, but there's something here that elevates us to a different stratosphere. And then he got to Brooklyn, and it was like, he's forgotten about all of the things that made it special. It wasn't just talent, it was an infrastructure. And I feel like for whatever reason, those guys don't want to make it seem like it's anybody else but them. And I don't know if that's an internal thing or a social media thing. Like, it's one thing, Bo, I can tell you in this new whole Twitter world where you got the separate columns now. I didn't realize that these, I won't call them bots, they're people running this stuff, but there's people here arguing with themselves every day about how great LeBron is or how much of the GOAT he is. And I wonder if that seeps into these guys' minds where they're watching this stuff every day. Like I had zero clue that these discussions, Bo, were happening outside of like debate television. I didn't know that these debates were happening in real life, like on the fake internet. And I think these guys take that stuff to heart where they have to say, no, I can't give Dwayne Wade credit. Can't give Steph Curry credit. Can't give these other guys credit. And I'm saying Kevin Durant is that way. You know what I mean? It's more LeBron than anybody else. But it's just so weird because by comparison, Michael Jordan was in tears saying, man, I'd never win 6 rings without Scottie Pippen. And I'm like, man, you could have won 6 rings with any damn body playing next to you. LeBron is like, man, this is only me. And I'm like, bro, we seen the movies. We was there.
No, that's an interesting point. And I think to be fair to LeBron, up until he got to Miami, it really was all about him. And after he left, largely about him. Like, that's the thing. Whenever you look at it, and they got the numbers about how much overwhelmingly worse the Lakers are this year with him off the floor versus on. And it just feels like whatever team gets constructed, it winds up being that way. No matter how good it seems to us at the beginning of the season, in the end, it gets to be that way. Like, I'm somewhat curious like exactly how that happens. And I'm not really trying to like blame him or anything like that, but it's an interesting thing to see how somehow you always at the end by yourself, right? It's like, oh man, Dad used to always say about the Chargers, no matter what, Phillip Rivers is going to be 40 seconds left, no timeouts, 80 yards to go. Like, why is it that you always wind up with the ball and no timeouts? I don't know.